Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we're really happy we got double the amount of talent here. Two great, exceptional, I don't know if we use influencers with LinkedIn, but let's say content creators, for lack of a better word, but a lot of great stuff there. So I'm really happy to talk with Chad and Josh here today. Maybe we'll start with you first, Chad. Maybe you can give us a quick bio there. Tell us a bit about yourself and what your practice is like.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, and awesome always to spend time with Josh too. So this will be fun. So my background is I grew up at one of the major law firms, Castles Brock, in the kind of M&A corporate finance department. So I was there for about 5 years, and then I traveled for 6 months, kind of around the world. So I did that as a bit of a break, and then when I came back, I went in industry. So I went to Indigo, which was wonderful, an amazing brand, and you got to see everything come to life in the stores. So that was cool. And so I was there for about 3 years as that legal function kind of shaped and changed and rebuilt some processes, which was fun. And then 3 years ago, I moved over to the Audience View portfolio of companies, which provides B2B and B2C platforms to the live events industry. So whether it's software that works in the background of your favorite sports team or music venue, or it's a B2C platform that tells you about industry news or helps you get discounted tickets to something. So we provide a whole bunch of those solutions around the world. And I came there to build out a function for that portfolio and have been doing that, from top to tail for the last 3 years. And so that's where I'm at now.
Perfect. And let's go over to you, Josh.
Always a pleasure, JP. Thanks for setting us up. Always good connection. I always got time for always good. So thank you for having me. I, like Chad, we worked at Castles. We overlapped there. Great place to start a career. I was there for about 4.5 years. Then I'm entrepreneur at heart, always have been. So I decided to start my own business, which didn't work out. Common story in the business land. Decided then to start my own law firm, and that's where I'm at right now. I'm the founder and managing lawyer at a small law firm, which carries my last name, Calderon Law. We're a team of two, about to be a team of three, and we do corporate commercial work, mostly buying and selling businesses. And it's great. I love it.
Oh, congrats on another hire, buddy.
Always
You're
be
3xing the employee base already.
Always be closing.
Well, let's start with that. I mean, since you do have the Castles Brock connection there, and comparing maybe your time, some of it which overlapped as you mentioned, with what you've done afterwards. So maybe Chad, you kind of offer that first from your comparison from working in Castles, then you had the time off there as well. You mentioned, which is always important, especially now when we're over the last couple of years, you don't really get that chance to travel. So maybe you could tell us a bit about that transition of going from Castles to where you are today, and then we'll go over to Josh with his transition as well.
Yeah, cool. It was a massive, massive transition. So, you work in a law firm, especially if you do something kind of specialized, and I was doing public company or pre-public company M&A and corporate finance. I mean, it's heavily regulated. There's, a lot of market pressure on deals and deal structure. The pace is incredible, but it's on kind of one specific thing. And often you might even be supporting like one or maybe two like specific industries. So you learn a lot about the legal framework that surrounds those types of deals. And that's what you do. And what I realized is, I wanted to be a lawyer because I thought Matlock was cool. Like I thought Andy Griffith was getting these people caught on the stand, having a hot dog. He probably invented the universal dress code of that gray suit. And what I realized like over the course of time was, maybe my expectations versus what I was doing weren't as tied together as, kind of the river that I had sat in kind of took me down. And I'm a bit of a curious cat more than most things in life. And I really just wanted to learn a lot about different types of things. And, so for me, what I realized is that probably a broader experience was going to suit my nature a bit better. And so that's why I wanted to move into industry, because you go into a company, especially one that has a lot of functions like a place like Indigo would, and in that same day, you're doing, IP, marketing, data security, corporate commercial stuff. It's a public company, so it has a public company, spin to it as well. And so there's just so many different things. And the magic of it, whether you got to figure out if you like that or not, is so many different people. You go from being a law firm, vast majority that are lawyers, speaking law to each other all the time, to going into an industry. vast minority are lawyers. Nobody talks about the law. Barely anyone cares about it unless it is needed to facilitate what they want to do. So it is a total shift on what your day-to-day looks like, what you learn, what you need to know, how you need to speak, how you need to convey messaging. And I just thought that was really cool and I loved it. And so, kind of the last spin of that was then building a function and running that function, which is what I've been doing for the last few years, which even has its own bent to it about like how you build the brand and processes and structure of a function, not just operating in it. And so for me, it kind of suited my nature a little bit more, a broader, a bit like pretty curious nature about all the different things rather than the depth of one specific thing, which just suits other people more. So that's what I kind of felt were the big differences.
And Josh, what about you? I mean, what's different about, having your own shingle, right? I mean, running everything yourself there. How's that different than your time at Castles?
I think such a different appreciation of the lens of like a big business like Castles. Any large business, it's such a well-run machine. And when you're in there, when you get hired as an associate lawyer, you're there for a specific function. And like you are there to do deal work, or you're there to support litigation group. And that goes not just for lawyers, but anyone who they hire. It's so mature. It's such a sophisticated business, and they need very specific people to do specific things: marketing, accounting, lawyer, whatever it may be. And then to go to, when you start your own business, you see that all that infrastructure that you took for granted, that I took for granted, is not there. Right? There is no other person to turn to. It really turns to you until you have enough momentum to then hire someone to get the help that you need. But to go from a place where, before the call, we're talking about, I'm head of sales. I am the head of sales, right? Like without me going out there to get more clients, there is no pipeline. There's no, well, we'll just wait for one of the partners to send me work, right? There's no person to turn to. I am the head of sales. And as I get more people involved who are handling more discrete parts, more functions of my practice, it's almost like I'm offloading. Like I used to do closing documents, like, or maybe to take like a specific Castles example, I was in the financial services group at Castles, and we had just a very smart, strong, robust team of clerks and legal assistants who would do things. So if you need like a search, you would just tell this person to do it. You just like, hey, can you please help me out with this? But now there is no person to turn to. Now, what used to be something that I could just email and someone would take care of it, and a lot of that work would just abstract it away. Now I got to figure it out. And so it's like this constant learning, and really, it's almost like you're forging your own path in the jungle. Instead of like very neat, clean roads paved out for you, you really got to grab a machete and hack away through the vegetation. So I'm so fortunate to have been able to start my career at a place like that, where you just see when something runs well, how it's supposed to run. And I'm very excited to now be able to build my own roads and do my own thing.
And one thing here, certainly I've talked to both of you separately, is for law students and maybe first year associates or just junior lawyers that may be thinking about going down a career path like yourselves, what can you maybe share with them in terms of what, if you were to go back to, we were all at Osgood in 2009, I guess we all overlap, but if you were going to go back and talk to, the 2009 version where, there was more of a push towards Castles and Bay Street, just whether it was through the school or just through our classmates, right? What can you tell them about your respective paths right now that, would be important to know before kind of going through the trajectory that you went on? Chad, first with you.
I would say the most important thing, I used to say this to students a lot when they were coming through the OCI process, is reflect back to a time in your life when you were very happy, whether that was academically, if you hadn't previously had a job, or professionally, if you had a different job, and personally, when you were surrounded in an environment where you felt like you were thriving. Because while you're working at a place and it's different. You got to pick a firm or you got to pick a company to work at. A lot of the tenets of what motivates you in life are always there. And the more of those that you can grab as early as possible, I expect the higher the motivation rate or the higher the happiness rate. So, examples for me when I thought back were like, okay, do you want to go to the biggest place and be kind of a smaller cog, but you're motivated by the brand or the stature or what it does? Or do you want to go to a place that isn't necessarily the biggest, but your opportunity to play a role might be bigger earlier on? Like what motivates you? For me, it was a latter. Or what types of humans really motivate you? Are they people that are like industry specialists that are going to drive those technical leading cutting edge skills into you? That's one example. Or a different one might be, are they people that really kind of like touch on the humanity of the thing? And for me, it's really important. I'm really relational. And so for me, it's a lot about the humanity of like people trying to think about your perspective and trying to help you learn the way that you would learn, not the way that they think you should learn. Like that for me plays a lot of weight. And so I would always say, like, listen, you're not always going to get everything you want, especially earlier days. But if you're very aware of the circumstances and the humans that really bring the most out of you, you can, one, assess and ask questions to figure out which of your opportunities tie closely to that. And then two, no matter if it's not perfect, being aware of it allows you to always be aware of how to find more of it, either in your current place or to look for somewhere else as a next or third or fourth step that has more of the things that are naturally passionate and resonate to you as a human. I just find that brings the most kind of career fulfillment and satisfaction. And I find people who are very fulfilled and happy do better because they're very naturally motivated. They're not motivated by external measures of money or a new title that they're chasing. That takes a lot of energy because it's an external measure of success. And so I think the earlier you can be reflective on who you are and what motivates you without judgment, just about knowing who you are, the better chance you'll be able to get a hold of that path quicker. Kind of similar to like what Josh did. Didn't take him very long. He realized he was a natural entrepreneur. He knew he needed to take some risks to start figuring it out. And it didn't have to be, a home run right out of the gate, because what it led him to was the next entrepreneurial thing, which is now being very successful and is fulfilling to him. And so I think trying to be reflective as early as possible, no matter how close you are to that endpoint, but just being aware, that would be the key. I would tell my former self.
And Josh, over to you there.
I think that I love that answer by Chad. It's almost like know yourself. The sooner you know yourself, and I don't think JP was expecting like a deep philosophical conversation about we'll never get to know ourselves fully. We're always knowing ourselves, but like you said, just like more like, who am I? Who do I want to be around? No judgment. Not saying X is better than Y. If you like working on like a Wall Street Journal deal and that motivates you because you can tell people, hey, I worked on this transaction. No one's judging you. It's just you should know that's what you like, the large transactions, you like that, or do you like other things? So I just really, Chad, I appreciated that. And I think that for law students specifically, it's like the challenge is doing that work about knowing yourself in the context of like a tornado of like, everyone is telling you to do that, like the social pressure of like, this is the only path, right? Like I remember OCIs and the gamesmanship, how many this person got 22 OCIs, or this person got offers from 7 different places. And I think a lot of that was not people, it was just like a trophy hunt. There's like the currency of that game was, let me just get into the biggest place. New York, San Francisco, tier A. Okay, if I lose there, then tier B is going to be a Toronto 7 sister firm. Okay, tier C. And you just, there's a pecking order, a social pecking order. And to anyone who's able to be in that environment and still strive to know themselves and say, I'm going to do my own thing, even though everyone is competing there, that would be a really strong, admirable person. So that's what, Chad, your response kind of conjured up for me. What I just kind of said something really, what I'd say, positive and empowering. I'm going to say something now. My response is not, maybe it's going to appear not really empowering, but bear with me on the question of like what I personally would tell law students about how I've done things. I would not tell people to start right away their own practice out of school. And I've posted about this before. I've thought about this long and hard. And I'm not saying you can't. Can't is I would never tell someone you are unable to do something. That's just completely wrong. It's just not ideal. And the reason for that is because I believe that trying to learn more than one thing at once is really challenging. And trying to learn how to be a lawyer and practice is very different than running a business. It's two different skills. It's like you're telling me I'm going to compete in weightlifting at the Summer Olympics and then compete in skiing at the winter. Like it could be done, but you have to be a superhuman talent. Either one of those is very difficult enough as it is. And the thought of trying to learn the craftsmanship of being a lawyer, what does that mean in terms of client and how do I respond and how do I deal with opposing counsel? That's a whole universe in itself. And then to have that person also trying to figure out how to run a business and how do I delegate? How do I manage cash flow? How do I hire people? How do I keep them motivated? Well, what if they leave and now I have to do what they were doing? It's almost like a complete unique skill set altogether. And they're not necessarily transferable skills.
You can't have both stressing you out at the same time.
It doesn't work. Recipe for disaster, I think.
I felt the same way when I went in-house, is that like, when I was trying to figure out what to do, I was like, well, I want a place that's big enough that has lots of functions because I was curious, I wanted to learn, but I didn't want a big legal function, but I wanted some lawyers there. Yeah. Because like all I was like kind of a human machine. I had learned to be a human machine in private practice because it's very specific tasks that I did that were complex and difficult, and I have a lot of respect for them, but I was kind of what you said, like doing a function. But then when you go into industry, it's a version of, especially running your own function is more akin to running your own firm, where you've got to learn how to interact with all these different people, build processes, build automation, build like scale, communicate with people that aren't lawyers or aren't like, CFOs. And I agree. And like, I didn't want to go there, or I wouldn't advocate for someone trying to be the only in-house counsel with no practical experience. Now you can gain that practical experience in different places. Like I've hired a bunch of people who have come straight, like not from law firms, and I'm training them. And then those people could run their own functions. But to your point, is you got to learn some skills first, not only because you're a better lawyer, but because it's too stressful. I loved when you said it's very difficult to learn and do two kind of complicated things at the same time. That'll break your brain and you won't do either of them well. So you got to have some level of technical ability at one of the two before you do the other one.
Yeah. Even though it sounds, that's why I started by saying it's not empowering. It's not a positive message of you can do whatever you want. I think that it's having done both, it would be ideal to start to learn from someone, to learn the technical skills first, to have a product to sell to people. Because when you're out on the street trying to convince people to part with their hard-earned money to hire you as a lawyer to execute on a deliverable, you got to have a product to sell. You're going to be very quickly found out to be a fraud if you don't have the expertise, right, to actually deliver a result. So I think ideally work somewhere that high quality, that resonates with you and your values, and then after a few years, call it 2, 3, 4, whatever, however much time it takes to feel comfortable, then I think start your own practice. It was just, like I said, you could do it right fresh out of school, but it's just going to be twice as hard. The lows are going to be 10 times as deep, and it's just not as ideal as when. Plus, like you're at your peak debt, right? Like we'll just talk about let's paint a picture. Post graduation, you're at your lowest point financially, least resources. Now you're working in a profession that you've never worked before, and then you're trying to learn two complicated skills at the same time. It's just not a good recipe for success. So that's what I would tell law students.
Okay, so one thing certainly that both of you have in common, and maybe you can tell us kind of where this started from, is sharing all of this advice there and on LinkedIn in particular. So maybe Chad, we can start with you. Where did that kind of come from? And is it as simple as just starting to post? Because I mean, there's plenty of people in our industry that have all these great thoughts and ideas, and they don't post, right? And they're wondering, well, what can I do to kind of share this? Is it simply just, if you build it, they will come, so to speak? And we're all big sports fans here, right? Is that's what it is there, Chad? Or maybe you can elaborate.
So for me, I'd always had a lot of, there's only two things I should say that are like really, really passionate to me. One is I like helping other people find the most in themselves. And then two is I like making the path easier. So I'd always thought about, like, ever since I started even at Castles, like, oh, why are we doing this document? Like, is that really necessary? It takes so much effort. The ROI is pretty small, but the pain is big. So it doesn't really make so much sense. And it just there wasn't really a lot of opportunity for a second year kind of piping up, being like, hey, we don't need this document, but I had all these ideas all the time, or about, like, since I'm very relational, I had a lot of ideas about creating bonds with other humans, whether internally to wherever you work or externally to, like, whatever stakeholders you have, not only because it's intrinsically valuable to me, but because it creates a lot of value with those people. And the more you have, like, a deep human connection with somebody, the more likely they are to part with their hard-earned money with you, or part with their hard-earned time. And so I always had these two threads going on in my mind, like human value, process value. And I just scrolled through LinkedIn for like 10 years, never really used it, mostly saw people being self-promotional, got pretty exhausted over it. And then during the depths of COVID, and I just expended, we've got a young kid, moved multiple times. We support the live events industry, went through a lot of, tumultuous times rebuilding, and I was just very exhausted. And I think I needed something that gave me a lot of energy. And so, when people think like, oh, should I share on LinkedIn or any platform? I would say is like, does it give you energy to do it? For me, it does. And I don't think that everyone should be out there posting if it's not really for you. Like, if you just enjoy scrolling or like engaging with, then do that. Like, you don't have to post. For me, I did it because it gives me a lot of good energy to feel like I'm putting something out there that might be helpful for someone else, or bringing some clarity to this industry that, whether intentionally or unintentionally, has like kept the doors closed for so long about like how things work and why they work that way. And without thinking about like, well, if we talked about it, maybe it'd become easier for everyone. And this is very motivating to me. So this is why I do it. And over time, maybe for, most of 2021, my posts were like, I don't know, once every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, pretty substantive about the law firm, kind of client relationship. And then kind of more this year, it's just been more about that, but like less heavy and just more about also the human element of it all. And I just find the engagement and the connection that I make with people through that platform very energizing. And so I think, if you're thinking about doing it, a lot of people are very hesitant about like, oh, what's my employer going to think? Or what are other people going to think? And I just think, for each individual, we got to think about what matters most. And what matters most to me, I think, in life is feeling like I'm helping other people and I'm like being in service of other people. It gives me the most energy. And so it just matters to me more than, if I know there's lots of my peers out there who are like, who is this guy doing this stuff with these posts? And do I got to see his mug? And like, but to me, it doesn't matter. It's like one of the only things in my life I've ever done where it doesn't matter to me what other people think. I've never felt that way about anything. I've always done it for like, get into this school, get this grade, get this job, get this title, get this comp, get this whatever. I don't think that about this. If I post something and it gets 1 engagement or 100 engagement, I actually do not feel differently. And that kind of energy like radiates into other elements of my life. And I can tell, because if I feel like I'm too busy to do it, I can tell other elements of my life start suffering. And so what I would say in summary is like, if it brings you energy, do it. Because if it gives you a little bit of energy, it'll give you a lot of energy the more that you do it.
And Josh, how about you? How did it all start with you?
Posting, I think posting on LinkedIn, it was like, that like this impulse that, the for like that big filter that people have about like their employer, that's a big one. Like, let's not discount that. Like, if it's going to sink you internally, or you have to weigh that, right? Like, fortunately, there's no social media committee or social media rules where I work, right? Because I haven't written them. So they don't exist. And so I don't need to answer to anyone. But that being said, people sometimes say, well, what if clients read it? Right. And if a client is offended by, I've thought about this, if a client is offended by what I write to the point where they say like, we're going to change services, then I don't think I'm writing anything on there that's offensive or insulting, or it's just my thoughts, my opinions on certain things. And if they leave because of that, then I'm at peace with that. Right. Like it's all good. There's plenty of clients out there. I'll just, find
That'll
other
probably
ways.
resonate with you more.
Exactly.
Because they'll
Actually,
read
you know
what you're
what?
saying and they'll be like, Josh is my man. Like, you and I, we were always friendly at Castles, but it was actually through your posts that, because we share a lot of the same threads, that I was like, you just kept coming up into my mind, and then we started connecting more regularly. And now I recommend you to other people. And so like the depth of the connection matters more, I think.
You find the right people.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, and you filter out the people that you don't vibe with. They can, like, the sooner that happens, as far as I'm concerned, the better. Like if I'm not the right voice in your life, then then I should be blocked, and you should find the right person who resonates with you.
I bet you those clients were never the most fulfilling relationships for everyone either. Like if you were able to segment them out, it would probably like follow like a good correlation there, that like those probably weren't the best fit, because the ones that are the best fit kind of get your vibe, like you were saying.
The data, like I haven't lost a single client yet because of my posts. So like that just, and I've been posting now for like a year probably total. So it's like the idea is a fear-based thinking like that, right? Like, and I think that's what stops a lot of people, JP. It's like, what are people going to think? What if this gets 0 likes? Who cares? I think you got to go in, if I were to give someone some thoughts about, well, do I start posting or not? I would say you got to do it with no expectation of any sort of return to you. I'm not talking about getting a new client or getting a new job. I'm even talking about, don't even think that someone's going to press the blue thumbs up. Forget about that. Like, if you feel like there's something you want to say, just put it out there. And if you do that without having an expectation of like how come people aren't commenting, or how come people aren't engaging, I think that's how you set up for, like, you win no matter what. You got your thought out there, you put your idea out into the universe, and now you're going to see that your worst fears are not going to come true. And the more you do it, the more you find people that you do vibe with. So I think that do it if you feel like you want to do it. I think do it with no expectation of having anything in return. And don't, if you're thinking of doing it to become like a content creator or an influencer or like that stuff, I just think it's going to backfire. And I see people all the time post and then stop posting because it doesn't get the immediate result that they want.
Yeah, it takes a lot of consistency, which means you got to be into it for yourself. Yeah, exactly. Not for anybody else, because you've got to be doing it for a long time. Because think about whatever you see out there in the world, like you got to have a level of trust and engagement with it. Well, it needs to show up a lot before you're like, yeah, I trust this thing that came out of the blue. You know that as a consumer of something. So if you want to be a creator of it, you better be doing it for your own purposes. Because if you're doing it for some external measure of success, it's going to take a long time. And in a very busy world where people have very busy lives, like that's a lot to ask. And so I think, Josh, you're like 1,000% right. I also think you're also bang on, because I get a lot of people saying to me too, oh, my employer is going to think this, or our clients are going to think that. And I kind of say, like, you seem like a pretty nice person. What are you thinking about putting out there? You're going to go from 0 to putting out like hate speech? Like, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to like go from 0 to being like, ever thought about this thing about the area of law? Like, you're not going to start like lambasting an industry or lambasting your firm. Like, you're going to put something moderately thoughtful out there. And like, if you're working at a place that, my personal view is, if you really want to do this and put out some generally positive vibe and interesting thought into the world, and the place where you're at really hates that, well, that's a pretty good thing to know. It's a short life, and if this is something that matters to you, you got to figure out how much it matters to you.
I find it interesting. One thought actually that I've thought about, like the number of big law firm lawyers who write are like 0. It's like 0. Very little, and they must have opinions, but like the fear at that level is like, must be
White
massive.
space everywhere here. White space everywhere. To like create a brand for yourself. Like who's going to websites to like decide if they like somebody? It's not the way it works anymore. People expect information to come to them. They're not searching the websites, you know? And so like you've got to you've got to be in service with this energy, right? Like you have got to be giving people something for, you know, what we would consider nothing out of the gate. That's the point of building a brand, is like being in service of other people and then letting the paths open themselves up to you. This world of like building a website and just expecting everyone to like come to your website only to read basically what is replicated on every competitor's website. That's no way to create a brand. There's no differentiator there. Like, who are you as a human? What does this whole industry mean to you? Like 75% of people won't care or dislike it. Who cares? The world's huge. The rest of the 25%, there will be some decent slice of that is like, thank goodness that person's saying it. And in that way, that resonates to me. And now all of a sudden you create a brand for yourself.
Right. I was going to say that in terms of what have you noticed now, a year and a half of posting? I mean, Josh was saying, look, I haven't lost any clients. I think you had posted well. Actually, I think I've gotten a lot of clients that way. But I mean, that certainly wasn't, you know, your plan there, as we were just talking about. But what else have you observed of just kind of putting this content out there, and what have you kind of gotten out of again that value of sharing there and helping, as Chad pointed out? What have you seen in terms of sharing out there with the responses? I guess we'll go to Chad first.
Well, one thing that I've noticed is there are so many people that have the same goals, wishes, anxiety about our industry, and are unwilling, nervous, can't say it at large. But you know, if you feel like, I saw this great post, so I'll have to track down who said it. And it was about like, I've met a whole bunch of these unicorns who basically all have these same fears. You know, everyone thinks they're a unicorn, where they're like, I'm anxious about this. I'm not good enough to do this, whatever. And so many people feel the same way, or so many people have wishes for our industry about like how it could be easier or better. And so that's one thing that like really caught me, was when I started sharing my ideas, a lot of people were like, oh, either privately or like through the post, were like, oh, thanks for saying that. Really glad someone's saying that. And so what that tells me is there is an opportunity for momentum. If we want to see something be better, we can make it better. There are lots and lots of people who want it to be better, and also benefit financially from that too. You know, just like Josh, you know, sharing a lot of ideas out there, which is better for other people. He's financially gaining from that, right? Like, you be in service of people, there's benefits that come back to you too. And I think this is a generation that is about to come into a lot of positions of influence. And there's a lot of folks that feel the same way. And so, you know, that's one thing that keeps me motivated to do it, is that if we can start shifting that thing, that is one thing that I realized, is that there's so many folks out there that feel these same trends. But I think we just got to demonstrate a level of courage to do it. And that comes when more people raise their voice on it. So, you know, that was one thing that I noticed.
Yeah, I'd say so. Like the amount of inbound, Chad, you probably get, like the amount of inbound messages, thoughts, like from all over the world. I'm not tooting my own horn. I try to say this with no ego. Like Australia, Malaysia, Singapore. Like when you put a message out, you don't know where that's gonna go, right? It's like a message in a bottle that you throw in the ocean. Like you just have no idea what's gonna happen. And so I've been humbled by like someone in Australia or someone in Germany messaged me to be like, hey, I loved your post. I'm like, how did this even get here? Like I was writing for, you know, I don't even know who I think is going to read it. There's people locally, but, and then you get like this influx of messages and people asking questions and stuff. So what you said, Chad, like the people who feel the same way, you know how many people who work at law firms have contacted me to say, well, how do I start my own law firm? Or what would you suggest? Or how do I go from litigation to corporate? Or like, there's so many people facing the exact same problems, but the problem is they have nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. If you Google, how do I turn, what are you going to get? How do I start my own law firm after working at a law? I think it's the ability to be in service to people at scale, right?
Yeah.
So like you can be in service to your close group of friends and your community and your close family members, but you may not have something to offer them at the exact same time that they need it. But what the internet and LinkedIn does is you can reach people on a global basis. And why don't you have your kid on, JP? It's just like, let's bring the kids on. I love that. You could reach people on a global basis, and you might be the exact person, the exact message, the exact sounding board that they need. And that has been incredible. Like, just to be able to help people and sort people's thoughts about different things that they're going through. I feel like a priest sometimes, because I feel like they're confessing stuff to me that they may not even confess to like close family and friends, right? Like, I don't like the area of law I'm practicing in. What do I do? Or how do I work here, but I want to start my own law firm, but I don't think I'm going to get any clients. So what do I do? It's like these really sensitive fears that people feel like they can share that vulnerability. So I'm humble when I get those messages. And it just, that's the type of feedback, to go back to your question, JP, about like, what would you tell someone about posting on LinkedIn? That, and I probably speak for Chad too, that's my fuel actually. Sometimes when I'm like, well, why do I need to post on LinkedIn? Like, I don't need to do, I'm not a content creator. I don't get paid to post on LinkedIn. It's just like a hobby for me. I'm a practitioner, right? Like, I have my business to run. But then you get these, like, this feedback, and it just gives you the juice to keep going. You're just like, okay, if I have something, I have this asset, right? Like this lived set of experiences, things I go through, mistakes I've made, thoughts I have, and they might be of value to people. And I just got this message from who knows where, validating all that. Well, you know what? I gotta double down on this. And it's not ego. It's, you're in service to people. You're actually helping them out. And that, when you get into that, that just gives you the motivation to then keep on posting over and over again. And so getting to there is like a big, that was a big milestone for me in terms of posting, because I'm always like, well, is this a waste of time? In the beginning, I should say, is this a waste of time? There's so many things to focus on. But then when you build a momentum and you get that feedback, it validates what you're doing and lights the way.
You know what else is cool I found is that, and this is again like different than the lifestyle I'd always lived, where I was like getting to the next stone in the pond, was if you share more of who you are, it will reveal more things to you. So like if you put more of yourself out there in the world, paths will start unveiling themselves that you would never have known before. People are going to come up to you with ideas like, hey, Josh, you ever thought about doing this? Or hey, Josh, can we work together on this? Can we collaborate on this? And like, maybe they're revenue generating. Maybe there's like an ad hoc business, or maybe it's just something that's like intrinsically fulfilling. But like, until you, it's like a two-step process. Like until you know who you are and what matters to you, plus telling someone, it can't come to life. Like you got to know what it is, and then you got to be willing to tell people, this is who I am, this is what I care about, this is what I'm passionate about, this is the information I want to share. Otherwise, nobody knows. And there's so many people out there looking for someone like Josh or JP or whatever to be like, you know this thing, I don't know about this thing, or I need someone to partner with me on this thing. And unless you're out there saying it, how are you going to know? Just like JP, he's looking for guests for his show. We're putting out stuff about this. JP connected with it for whatever reason, he connected with it. And so then he's like, great, now there's a thing. We clearly get energy out of it. That's why we're here. Like, it's a very tangible example of like, what motivates you? Do you tell people it motivates you? If yes, people will find you and they will unveil things that you could do or be a part of that you wouldn't have been able to come with up with by yourself.
Yeah, we're here because we post, I think. Like, JP, am I wrong? Like, we show up in your feed, right? Like, that's how the world works.
I mean, and then other people, like, I mean, like and other people say, hey, you know, you should reach out to Chad, or you should reach out to Josh, right? I mean, on top of that, and then it just draws, well, hey, if other people are interested, then why not? I think, you know, students and anyone else will benefit from it. And it's always more enjoyable when you have people who want to share, right? When they want to come and talk, right? I mean, of course, I can go and reach out to whoever, and they have all these great insights from their practice, but maybe they don't want to share, right? And it's kind of like pulling some strings there to get them on. But you know, it's always better when it's someone who really likes to engage, and especially with people coming up into the profession, right? I mean, I think one of the things there is some people have either it's we've mentioned, like, you know, what is my employer going to think, but maybe just even generally, what are my colleagues going to think if it's not an issue like that? What about this, this imposter syndrome, or maybe people are going to disagree with me, or I'm going to have any of these issues. Now, Chad certainly says, well, hey, you know what? I'm putting this out there, and that's what I gain from having that energy shared, right? And then I'm able to help. I mean, anything more there in terms of that? If there are people who kind of are afraid of what they're going to put, not necessarily we've talked about the employer side, but just how the legal community will engage with it, and how to kind of overcome maybe those fears.
I mean, I think, listen, it's a long journey, and I go through this all the time too. But I was listening to like the Jay Shetty podcast recently, and he did this amazing thing on alliteration because it's Jay Shetty. But he was talking about like what matters to you more, your passion or other people's perception. Your passion, or all these things. I did a great speech on, and I think it's what kind of life are you trying to live? Are you trying to live a life that's not like super authentic, but you're not going to take heat or your perceived embarrassment from like other people that may or may not be relevant to you? Or on the flip side of it, the flip side of the risk of what if I post and people don't like it, or the flip side is, what if you do it and it means something to someone and you connect with them? So I think lawyers were just so trained in spotting risk that we can live a whole life without seeing the upside and the positivity. And like, that's one magical piece for Josh in running a business, is that like you are focused on the upside. Yes, you're running a business around law, but you're running a business which is about profitability and positivity. And I think that that's one thing that's been amazing for me about LinkedIn, is like I was able to like drop this cynicism, right? It's so much easier to criticize than to create. If you're a cynic about people posting on LinkedIn, why are you going to LinkedIn, right? Like, and what is your point of going to LinkedIn? The only point of going to LinkedIn is to see what people are creating and posting. So if you think that creating and posting, and you think of it in a cynical way, why are you even there? You're just going to look at stuff that you think silly and ridiculous. And so what I would say is that like, actually the platforms are there because people post. There's a stat that basically says 99% of people purely consume, only 1% create. So if you want to create something, and if that's your platform or something like that, you're going to be in the 1% of users. And then of the people that create, half of them are purely self-promotional. So whack that out, because nobody cares about self-promotional posts. So now you're into 0.5% of people who are being non-self-promotional posting. You can connect with people instantaneously through that. So that magic and that positivity for me, as soon as I started doing it, just heavily outweighs any of this like perceived cynicism from folks that are too nervous to create content themselves.
And Josh, anything more to add to that?
I had like 7 thoughts come through me all at once on this.
Let's hear them, man.
It's like jammed, DVP, like 2 lanes for 7 thoughts. I don't even know where to start. Like, I'm going to start with something I think Chad is going to like the paradox, Chad. When you do something for the service of others, somehow it ends up serving you. How is that possible? How come, like, when I post, trust me, I'm being truthful from my heart. It's not because I'm trying to generate business. Nothing I write is ever client facing. It's never something a client is going to care about. I write about stuff in the practice of law. I write for other practitioners. And it's not some, convoluted scheme to get in the good graces of practitioners and get referral work. It's not, truly. And yet somehow it's still been financially rewarding to me.
Because people are drawn to that. People are drawn to selflessness.
Right.
We've forgotten about that.
But
and genuineness too.
Yeah, that principle of like, you can get what you want as long as you're not in it because of you primarily, right? Like,
yes.
And it's just the data like that I've posted about it. I've probably I think I'm at 25K, 30, whatever, some 5-figure number of business that from people that did not know I existed before LinkedIn. And I didn't do it for that, but it's just a natural consequence, I believe, of sharing thoughts and being visible and hopefully adding value to someone's feed. There's a lot of junk on there. If someone reads, if I get someone's attention for 10 seconds, I do want to make sure that I give them something valuable. And so I try to put that empathy, that sensitivity in each one of my posts. And it must be on some level resonating, because no one's going to send something to, to someone that they don't like, or someone who's not providing value to them. I also did want to say another common thing that people say about LinkedIn, like, I have nothing to write about. That's a common thing too, right? And to me, like, a few months ago, I was on, I don't have TikTok, but I was on someone was showing me something on TikTok about this, it was a student at some law school, like a third year law student. And she had like some massive following, like almost 1 million followers. I can't remember her name, but like, there can't be that many of them out there. It's probably very easy to track. And so I looked at a couple of her videos, like just days in the life of a law student. I lived the life of a law student. I'm not interested in that at all. I would not follow, I would not watch. But yeah, that's me. What about the 800,000 people who are interested? And so at every level that you go at, you have information and insights and opinions that the people following your footsteps wish they had. And so it's not
Maybe
like
they just want to resonate with. Like,
exactly.
That's a trap. People
Yep.
think that, like, I've got to drop gold nuggets every
Yeah.
single time. A lot of people just want to connect. They want to feel seen. They want to feel acknowledged. They want to know that what they think isn't crazy. And so a lot of people are living your concurrent experience with you, but seeing someone say it is very magical and powerful to them. Like, it's not about, Josh is right on. Like, it's not about you don't have the information. You know what the difference is actually doing it and then actually doing it consistently. It is not about I have a lack of things or a lack of experiences. It doesn't have to be novel. There aren't that many things out there that are novel. Like, all you're trying to do is to, like, help connect the bonds between others through either knowledge or lived experience or empathy or curiosity or whatever it is, or connecting people. Like, at JP, you'd be interested in this. Like, you would be shocked at, like, how much value that provides people. And the easiest way I tell people to think about that, think about it if you're on the other side. So people are like, oh, why would Chad tag Josh? Well, put yourself on the other side. What if Josh tags me and it's like, hey, Chad, just thought you'd be interested in this? How do you think that feels to me? Josh is thinking about me for something specific, tags me into this other thing. How do you think the creator of that post feels? Josh is not only engaging, he's bringing in a different audience of someone else who's interested. Like, whenever you're fearful of, like, the value or lack of value in your creation, put yourself on the other side of the fence and be like, how would I feel if someone did that for me? And you'll instantly be like, that would feel amazing. That would feel really nice. That's why you should do it.
Perfect. So thanks both of you for taking the time and sharing all that. I know you have lots of great posts, whether you think they're gold nuggets or not there. And again, that's the reason we obviously all knew each other at a period of time before, but I mean, it reconnected because I see that. And I think that's great that it's being put out there. So take all of your great content there. Maybe you could think of one maybe post that comes to your mind there, or any final words of wisdom, maybe to kind of wrap everything up. And we'll start with you, Chad, there. Anything to share with students and young practitioners? And thanks again for joining us.
For the folks who are like, well, I can't show too much of myself out there, and here's what I have to say. Buy legal services from all over the world. I am 1000% uninterested in the same, like, in the box human saying in the box words. I've lost interest in that. And people think like, oh, well, I'm just got to be substantively A+. No such thing. There are like the people who don't know what they're doing. Nobody uses them. Then there's like everyone else, and there's like 2% of people who do very specialized things, and no one really cares about their humanity because you have to have that specialized knowledge. 99% of the legal service you're ever going to buy are in this box. The reason why I buy those services are based on the style of provider that I need. And so if you don't feel like you can show who you are, how's anyone going to know they should use you? And so what I would say is use your personality to your advantage. And I'm not saying what type of personality matters more. It doesn't. It's being authentic to you and talking about what matters to you, because there are tons of very similar or complementary minded folks out there looking to connect with someone that resonates with them as a human. And if you're too afraid to show who you are as a human, you cannot expect people to come and find you. And they will not find you simply because you tell everyone you are the best or the smartest. No one on the buy side believes that anymore. nobody cares, and it doesn't matter. Because for 98% of the things out there, you do not need the 3 people in the world that know it. What you need is someone who is proficient, can do that job in the way that matters to you as a buyer. You can convey that through you are as a human. And so if you drop the fear and show who you are, you're so much closer to making those connections that'll make kind of your career and experience so much more rewarding.
And Joshua, you get the last word.
The anchor leg. Get the baton and then run it home. I'd say I was gonna go with something that like kind of connecting with what Chad said, like to get atypical results, you gotta do atypical things. Right? If you do what everyone else does, if you do what the average person does, you're gonna get the average returns. So using Chad's beautiful visual, if you do what the 99% does, you're just gonna end up with the 99%. And now we're choosing like lettuce at a supermarket. It's all the same, right? No one buys branded lettuce. It's just lettuce, right? It's just a commodity. And I'm a believer that each one of us is unique. Each one of us is an individual. We're not here to be commodities. We're not here to blend in with everyone else. And this is a much deeper topic because I think our social conditioning and our education system pushes us to kind of be homogeneous, to be the same. But to succeed in business, to get anywhere interesting, you got to be different. How do you be different? By being yourself.
Right.
Because there's no one like you.
That's right.
So the more I post and really show the posts that do what I would say the posts that do the best, right? In terms of however you want to measure that, inbound messages, likes, comments, whatever, are the posts where I would say I'm most myself.
Mm-hmm.
The post where I feel like I sound like everyone else, flat.
Mm-hmm.
The post where I really turn up and be like, I'm actually a little bit uncomfortable with this. Mm-hmm. This is too much Josh I'm showing on the internet right now. Maybe I should dial it back. I post anyway. That's the one that resonates. It's not,
that's right.
Not a coincidence. That's not like a random. It's because there's only one Chad, there's only one JP, there's only one Josh. So if you give the world which is uniquely yours, it's just going to stand out above the masses. And that's
how fresh.
That's how you're going to get job. Yeah, it has to be fresh because it doesn't exist by definition.
That's right. That's right. People think that the substance has to be fresh. It's you plus whatever you're talking about, which is the freshness. Nobody else is you, to your point. Yeah. It's the combination. People feel stuck because they don't realize it's a combination. You already have the vast majority of it by being yourself.
Yeah. You, with your experiences in 2022 at this particular time, irreplaceable. That's right. That's as unique as it gets. And I'll tell you, if I was looking to hire anyone, right? Like I'm in a position to hire, later this year, I'm looking to hire another lawyer, right? Factually. Where am I going to look? LinkedIn. Who am I going to look for? People who are posting.
That's right.
Are they visible? What are they saying? What are their values? What are their principles? Not just lawyers. If I'm going to hire an accounting vendor or X vendor, or what software do I get? What am I looking for? Everyone is buying the same way, right? So if you want to be like that lettuce, you're just competing with an undifferentiated group of people. And to not be part of the masses, you got to be yourself. You got to put yourself out there. As uncomfortable as it is sometimes, that's how you get the returns.
When you get closer to yourself. It's funny, I think you and I talked about this once. We're actually writing for ourselves, to ourselves, a lot of the time that we're putting stuff out there. And it actually reveals more of yourself to you. And that's a pretty special thing.
Yeah, that's like JP doesn't have another hour.
I know.
Yeah,
Josh, we'll just have a call later. I'll just call you tonight.
Those when you write when you're in the mirror.
That's right.
Like that's when you get your deepest insights. When you're like, wow, I didn't know that was in there. And then that's the stuff that resonates the most.
That's right.
All right, perfect. I wish we had another hour. We can keep on chatting here, but no, it was always great, and keep doing what you're doing. I think it's certainly impacting so many people that are getting a chance to see that, and kind of like pulling the view behind the curtain, right? Because as you said, a lot of the people that are in big law that are at the big firms aren't posting. There's like maybe no one, right? I mean, it's always good to get that perspective, and because as you said, that a lot of people are thinking the same thing, but they just need someone to put it out there to kind of like and comment and engage with. So all the best to both of you. Certainly keep in touch. Maybe one of these days we can do this in person, or even with the kids and stuff too. But always great talking to both of you, and take care. Take care, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, JP.
Yep. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Josh. See you.